The trauma trap. Part 2. Identifying the trigger and moment of trauma reactivation. When a trauma memory is reactivated in our solar plexus or emotional energy body, we can notice this immediately. It is precisely the moment when we move from inner peace to anxiety. The reason why we move from inner peace or tranquility to anxiety is what we have named before, the trigger or remembrance of the foundational trauma and its related events or happenings from the past. We have seen in video part 1, trauma equals the past reimagined in the present plus emotional charge. When a trigger appears, the mind projects an old image, with old meaning, and old emotion. The body reacts as if the past is happening now. The trauma loop is not the event, it is the repeated emotional interpretation of that event. The trauma loop sequence therefore is 1. Trigger. 2. Memory and imagination reactivation of emotional response to the trigger. 3. The solar plexus or emotional body marks it as unsafe or safe. Mostly unsafe in case of persisting trauma. 4. Unsafe means survival mechanisms are activated leading to the adopted survival strategies: fight, flee, freeze and/or fawn. 5. If we are able to understand and recognize trauma for what it is, a reactivation from a past experience in the emotional present, we may be willing to accept that in the present moment it is safe enough to proceed on a more beneficial path of healing. 6. Safe enough means the traumatic experience subsequently is energetically allowed to move to our inner identity center where it is checked, leading to 2 possibilities. Option 1. This experience is not part of my identity. In this option, we are not yet ready to see the traumatic event and the reactivated emotions as a concealed message about a part of us that is asking for healing. In our method, every experience in the outside world is a reflection of an inner wound positively asking for attention. Thus, a reactivated trauma response is an indication the trauma experience is still ruling the emotional energy body and, to be able to live a more fulfilling and happier life, the underlying trauma asks for healing attention. Rejecting it as not part of my current, wounded identity is rejecting the body's request for attention, healing, and integration. Option 2. Your identity center is energetically prepared to investigate, integrate, and heal the traumatic experience and is willing to review and re-examine your current trauma-shaped identity and to accept the option that this current trauma-shaped identity is not beneficial. That it needs adaptation, healing and transformation in order to live a happier and peaceful life. To summarize, trauma release and healing requires 2 conditions before healing can begin. 1. The willingness to accept the trauma response for what it is, a memory, reactivating emotions in the present without imminent physical danger. Therefore you are willing to consider your current situation safe enough, not life-threatening, to proceed the process of healing despite doubts about your emotional safety still being present. 2. The willingness to accept the fact that your current identity perception, derived and sustained by the reactivation of the trauma's emotional response, may not be correct. That the trauma shaped you is not your true self. Which leads to your willingness to examine your current identity perception and, when given logical, rational and plausible reasons, the willingness to adopt a more beneficial identity label. Or even rediscover your true self. You are still here and willing to examine this path further? Great. Let's move on. Identifying the trigger. As mentioned before, when traumatized, we often focus on repeating the past story and elaborating on details about what has happened in our past. Be aware that this only amplifies the emotional charge in your body and therefore it amplifies the unsafety emotions and survival strategies that are not beneficial to healing. They are mainly activated by your ego to urge you to fight, flee, freeze or fawn to emerge a false sense of safety and control. Therefore, stop focusing on the old story. It does not really bring you safety, only the short-term illusion of safety, but eventually it leads to withdrawal, dysfunctional relationships, depression, loneliness, sadness, etc. Mainly focus on isolating the moment of reactivation via a trigger or remembrance, as we have seen in video part 1. Ask yourself, what happened right before you felt the emotional shift to anxiety? What was the external signal? We are locating trigger moving to emotional signal, not narrative content. The narrative, in this case, is mainly a distraction and a deflection from the emotional charge that created unsafety. We often use this distraction and deflection to give ourselves an alibi not to confront our core wound, the emotional reactivation in the present due to something from the past that is too painful to face. However, denying the core wound by repeating old stories extensively and blaming others for our suffering is not the solution. You tried, but it didn't work. Victimization is not the solution. Taking responsibility for your own well-being is. Name the imagination that triggered you. You sit down and name the image, past event, that returned or got reactivated again. Examples: her tone sounded like my mother. The silence meant rejection. The look meant danger. Then, be aware to understand and acknowledge, so the mind showed you a memory of how this felt in the past. This way, we separate what is happening now, what the mind is remembering. This is the beginning of self-liberation. By realizing that the life-controlling trauma is mostly a reflection from the past, brought to you by your memory when triggered by something in the present, the fear that the traumatic event will happen again in the near future, and your frantic and anxious attempts to prevent and control the outcome to make it different than before. Does all of this actually lead to a sense of more safety and control? Be honest. No, it does not. It never did, it never does, and therefore, it's guaranteed it will also not lead to safety and control in the future. To be continued.